The view screen showed a lone human standing between 3 alien tiger cubs and a Keon warship. Their mother's body lay cooling in the dust. We were expecting another casualty report. Instead, we got the first recorded instance of a human using nursery rhymes as a tactical weapon. The tactical displays showed what shouldn't have been possible. 3 juvenile Tigrians huddled behind a single human's legs. Their mother's corpse sprawled 20 meters away, her striped fur smoldering from plasma impact. Standard Keon engagement protocol clearly forbade targeting non-combatants. We all knew the rules. They just didn't seem to apply today. The warship's primary cannons glowed with contained energy. Targeting lasers painted crimson dots across the human's chest plate. Standard tactical projections gave 97 seconds until firing solution completion. Survival probability registered at 0.03%. The numbers didn't lie. They rarely did. I checked the environmental suit specifications on secondary display. Standard issue Mark 7 exploratory gear. No weapon systems. No defensive capabilities beyond radiation shielding. The human stood empty-handed against a battle cruiser that had leveled cities. Command logs showed no active operations in that sector. No distress calls. No backup en route. Keon warfare doctrine treats offspring elimination as necessary security protocol. They don't risk future combatants. They don't take prisoners from species that show resistance. Their military histories filled databases with examples of entire bloodlines erased for lesser offenses than obstructing their warships. The human began vocalizing. Low-frequency vibrations registered on acoustic sensors, rhythmic patterns unlike any combat language we'd cataloged. The translation matrix returned 0 matches for known hostile or diplomatic phrases. It wasn't a threat. Wasn't a surrender. Then the nursery rhyme started, simple melodic structures from human childhood. Twinkle, twinkle, little star created interference patterns in the warship's targeting computers. Row your boat disrupted harmonic stabilizers. The Keon vessel's weapon system cycled down unexpectedly. Power readings dropped 40% across all offensive capabilities. We watched the human shift weight between feet. The environmental suit's biometrics showed elevated stress markers but steady respiration. Heart rate held at 68 beats per minute. The vocalizations continued without pause. 14 different rhymes in 3 minutes, each one disrupting different ship systems. Command center fell silent. We'd prepared for ambushes, for fleet engagements, for tactical withdrawals and emergency evacuations. Nobody had prepared for someone to stand between orphaned aliens and certain death while singing children's songs. The warship's engines flared as it adjusted position. New tactical projections appeared. Survival probability jumped to 18%, then 32%. The Keon commander was hesitating. Their targeting solutions wavered. The human kept singing. This single act would redefine interspecies engagement protocols for decades. Military academies would study the audio frequencies. Xenopsychologists would analyze the cultural implications. But in that moment, we just watched one person weaponize nostalgia against annihilation. Vexler's captivity began with broken expectations. Every Arcturan tactical forecast predicted interrogation fields, neural scramblers, psychological conditioning chambers, standard procedure for dealing with captured officers. Our intelligence briefs documented human detainment protocols as brutal, efficient, designed to break willpower through systematic deprivation. He found a simple metal room. 4 walls, 1 cot, a waste reclamation unit in the corner. No surveillance equipment visible. No energy fields damping his cognitive functions. The door sealed with a mechanical lock instead of plasma containment. Primitive by any modern standard, almost insultingly so. His captors moved differently than anticipated. They wore soft-soled shoes that made no sound on the metal flooring. Their voices maintained calm, measured tones even when giving commands. No raised pitches. No aggressive posturing. Arcturan POW protocols demand sensory deprivation for all new captures. Complete darkness, sound damping, isolation to disorient and soften resistance. These humans offered none of that. The first guard brought a food tray 93 minutes after capture. Standard nutrient paste in recognizable formulations. Hydration supplements matched to Arcturan biology, not punishment rations, not the contaminated offerings typically used to degrade prisoner health. The guard placed the tray on a small table that folded from the wall. No physical contact, no attempts at intimidation. That's when Vexler noticed the teeth. The human's lips pulled back during the exchange. 42 exposed enamel surfaces, perfectly aligned. In Arcturan culture, this displays maximum aggression, a threat display indicating imminent attack. Our military manuals classify this expression as pre-combat behavior. The human made the expression while performing a non-hostile action. The cognitive dissonance registered immediately. Bexlor's tactical training emphasized observable contradictions. When behavior patterns defy logical explanation, either the observer misunderstands the rules or the observed species operates on fundamentally different principles. The food contained no toxins. The room offered multiple escape possibilities if one ignored the obvious surveillance. The guard showed biological threat signals while performing nurturing actions. He began cataloging the discrepancy. Heart rate monitoring of guards during interactions, facial muscle tension analyses, vocal stress patterns. The teeth exposure occurred during 37% of human interactions, never accompanied by aggressive posturing, often paired with what appeared to be relaxation cues. Shoulder posture dropping, breathing patterns slowing. Our prisoner assessment protocols assume all species operate on similar threat recognition frameworks. Bexlor recognized this might be the critical error. The humans weren't following standard interrogation practices because they weren't interpreting captivity through standard paradigms. Their entire communication framework might operate on inverted principles. This evolutionary glitch in human behavior became his primary focus. If teeth exposure signaled non-aggression instead of aggression, every military assessment required recalibration. Every first contact protocol needed rewriting. The war itself might be based on a fundamental misinterpretation of basic biological signals. His initial assessment of human insanity would soon face its first proper test when they brought the colored puzzle cube. Every Arcturan cadet masters the honor, grimace during basic training. It's the first facial expression we learn. Teeth fully exposed, jaw muscles tensioned, a clear signal of combat readiness and intent to dominate. The manual specifies 42 tooth surfaces minimum for proper execution. We practice in mirrors until the muscle memory becomes instinct. This isn't optional. It's foundational to military communication. First contact footage showed humans making identical expressions. Battlefield recordings captured them smiling before weapons discharge. During negotiations, while receiving surrender terms, our xenocultural analysts certified these as threat displays. They filed 17 separate reports documenting the aggression patterns. The evidence seemed unequivocal. The Imperium's war declaration specifically cited these facial expressions as justification for hostilities. Page 42, subsection 9. Documented biological threat displays preceding all engagements. Human psychological databases told a different story. Their studies categorized smiling across 47 distinct social contexts. Greeting rituals, affection displays, amusement responses, even pain reactions. Captain Santos accessed the cultural archives after the third ceasefire collapsed. She found video compilations showing the same expression during birth celebrations, wedding ceremonies, reunion events. The database contained over 10,000 categorized instances. Battlefield footage took on new meaning when cross-referenced. That threat display before weapons fire, human soldiers reassuring each other. The aggressive posture during negotiations, diplomats attempting to establish rapport. The combat readiness expression during surrender, relief at conflict resolution. Our entire understanding inverted in 73 minutes of database searching. The cultural divide became terrifyingly clear. We interpreted a universal friendly gesture as ultimate aggression. They likely interpreted our neutral combat readiness expressions as hostility, both sides reacting to perceived threats that never existed, a mutual failure of basic communication at the biological level. Santos compiled the evidence into a tactical brief, video comparison side by side, human smiling during combat alongside human smiling during celebrations, statistical analysis of muscle group activation. The data showed no meaningful difference between supposed threat displays and friendship signals. Our own forensic analysis confirmed the findings. The war began because two species couldn't read each other's faces. This revelation demanded immediate operational changes. All frontline units received stand-down orders pending cultural briefings. Intelligence divisions started recalibrating threat assessment algorithms. The very foundation of interspecies engagement protocols required complete overhaul. How do you fight an enemy when you can't tell if they're threatening you or being friendly? The implications stretched beyond military applications. Trade negotiations, diplomatic exchanges, scientific collaborations. Every interaction between our species had been filtered through this fundamental misinterpretation. The economic costs alone would take decades to calculate. The cultural damage might never fully heal. This facial expression misunderstanding became the key to unraveling the entire conflict. Not resource disputes, not territorial expansion, not ideological differences, simply the inability to recognize when another species is trying to be pleasant. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so. Catastrophically expensive in lives and resources. The recognition of this communication failure would force both sides to reconsider every interaction since first contact, every battle, every failed negotiation, every missed opportunity for peace, all potentially stemming from misread facial muscles. The recalibration of interspecies relations would begin with learning to smile back appropriately. The human guard placed the multicolored cube on the metal table without ceremony. Standard psychological evaluation tool, they said, measured problem-solving capacity and patience in unknown species. They didn't understand what they'd just handed him. For Arcturans, complex puzzles carry cultural weight far beyond mental exercise. Our entire diplomatic framework uses puzzle solving to determine negotiating partners' intelligence thresholds. The Cube of Worthiness tradition dates back 7 generations. Solving intricate patterns demonstrates cognitive flexibility, strategic foresight, the capacity for complex thought necessary for meaningful dialogue. We don't negotiate with species that cannot solve basic spatial problems. Wechsler recognized the test immediately. The human might see it as simple psychological assessment. He saw it as a determination of his people's right to communication. His personal honor and his species' standing rested on those colored squares. The guard made no move to explain the rules. No time limit stated. No indication of successful completion parameters. The test began the moment the cube touched the table. He rotated the puzzle in his hands. The mechanism moved with precise resistance. 26 smaller cubes making 54 colored faces. 6 colors, 9 squares per face. The mathematical permutations stretched into billions of possibilities. Human records showed only 5.2% of their own species solved it without guidance. The average solution time exceeded 35 minutes for educated adults. His fingers moved with trained precision. Arcturan puzzle-solving methodology emphasizes pattern recognition over trial and error. Identify core structural relationships. Solve one face completely before addressing adjacent sections. Maintain mental mapping of all piece locations during rotation. The clicks of rotating sections echoed in the quiet room. 16 minutes and 72 seconds after the cube touched the table, the final click echoed through the chamber. All faces showed uniform color alignment. Perfect solution. No misaligned sections. No incomplete patterns. The time placed him in the Scholar Warrior caste by Arcturan standards, a rating that permitted diplomatic communication with royal families and high command. The human guard observed the solved cube without visible reaction. No change in breathing pattern. No muscle tension shifts. Wechsler placed the completed puzzle on the table with deliberate ceremony. He understood the cultural bridge he'd just built. The humans might not recognize the significance, but he did. His people would. He spoke his demand clearly. No honorifics. No negotiation. Simply the required statement for one who has proven worth. I will speak with Supreme Commander Azix to preserve my honor and my people's standing. The guard's eyes flickered at the name. Azix commanded the entire Arcturan invasion force. No prisoner had ever requested direct communication with such high command. The request represented either tremendous opportunity or immediate termination. Azix tolerated no interruptions during combat operations. The penalty for unjustified communication during active engagement was neural disintegration. But the solved cube changed the calculus. It provided the justification few could match. This moment would determine the next phase of the conflict. Either communication would open between command structures, or Wechsler would become another casualty of cultural misunderstanding. The human guard left with the solved cube. No words exchanged. No indication of acceptance or rejection. The door sealed behind him with the same mechanical finality as before. The request traveled through human communication networks at standard priority. It would reach Captain Santos's terminal in 73 seconds. Her decision would either prevent a massacre or accelerate one. Sensor logs confirmed the human's physiological state remained unnervably stable. 68 beats per minute. Steady respiration. No adrenaline spikes. The Kian captain had already demonstrated their resolve. The Mother Tigrion's body still smoldered from a single precision shot. Standard Kian doctrine leaves no loose ends. Elimination of potential future combatants isn't just protocol. It's foundational to their security philosophy. Offspring represent unfinished threats. The math is simple, brutal, and consistently applied across 300 documented engagements. The human offered no weapons. No defensive posture, just standing there between the warship's charged cannons and 3 juvenile Tigrians. Targeting systems painted the environmental suit with 5 separate laser guides. Firing solutions computed and recomputed. The Kian battle computer registered no hostile intent from the human's position, no energy weapons charging, no movement patterns suggesting attack preparation. This created a tactical paradox their systems weren't programmed to resolve. Then the vocalizations began. Low rhythmic patterns at frequencies most species use for subconscious communication. The translation matrix returned 0 matches for known languages. Not combat taunts. Not surrender pleas. Not diplomatic formalities. The acoustic profile matched nothing in the galactic database. Human nursery rhymes, as we later learned, contain complex phonetic structures most species process as non-threat signals. The rhythms follow mathematical progressions that disrupt certain targeting algorithms. The warship's weapons remained active but didn't fire. Targeting systems cycled through acquisition modes without locking. Defensive shields fluctuated at unusual intervals. The human's steady vocalizations created interference patterns in the Kian ship's harmonic stabilizers. Each rhyme produced different effects on their systems. Some disrupted navigation, others caused power distribution irregularities. The Kian captain faced an opponent using entirely unconventional warfare. We monitored the standoff through long-range sensors. Heart rate never elevated. Breathing patterns stayed consistent despite radiation exposure from the warship's engines. The human maintained perfect vocal pitch and rhythm while standing meters from instant vaporization. This wasn't panic, wasn't desperation. It was calculated cultural deployment. The songs themselves became both shield and weapon, acoustic patterns that confused advanced targeting computers and gave the Kian commander pause. Their tactical systems couldn't categorize the threat properly. Non-aggressive biological signals, non-standard sonic attacks, a defender showing no fear while protecting non-combatants. Every aspect violated standard engagement parameters. The Kian hesitation created a 17-second window where firing solutions degraded instead of improved. In combat terms, 17 seconds is a lifetime. This unconventional defense would eventually rewrite entire chapters of engagement protocols. Military theorists would spend decades analyzing how childhood songs neutralized a warship's offensive capabilities. The lesson wasn't about superior technology or physical strength. It was about using cultural elements as tactical tools, about recognizing that sometimes the most effective weapon is something the enemy cannot comprehend because it exists outside their understanding of conflict. The human stood there singing while their environmental suit integrity dropped below 40%. Radiation warnings flashed on our monitors. They never stopped, never faltered. The 3 cubs huddled closer to the human's legs as if recognizing the source of their protection. This image would become the defining moment of the incident, one species protecting, another using nothing but remembered melodies from their own childhood. Santos overrode 7 separate recommendations for termination. Her senior officers presented standard military logic. Prisoner communications during active conflict represent unacceptable risk, especially communications requesting direct contact with enemy high command, especially from a species with documented superior hacking capabilities. Their assessment wasn't wrong, it just wasn't complete. She ordered full encryption lockdown on all non-essential systems. Every data stream beyond life support and basic navigation received triple-layer quantum encryption. The Arcturan technological advantage meant any open channel could become an invasion route. Their cyber warfare capabilities exceeded human countermeasures by 34% across all tested metrics. We knew this. We'd seen their systems penetrate hardened networks in 17 seconds flat. Vexlor would speak to ASICs under maximum monitoring. Visual, audio, neurological, and physiological tracking simultaneously. 4 separate analysis teams would review the data in real time. Any deviation from expected parameters would terminate the transmission instantly. Human interspecies communication attempts historically showed a 92% failure rate. Most ended in escalated hostilities. Several resulted in immediate weapons discharge. The transmission would use secured diplomatic band, Channel 7. This frequency carried specific protections under 38 different interspecies treaties. Violating its sanctity represented one of the few universally recognized war crimes. Both sides theoretically respected its integrity. Theoretical respect and practical application often diverge during active combat operations. Santos bet her entire career on a cultural variable. She prioritized potential misunderstanding over confirmed military threat. The solved puzzle cube suggested cognitive parity. The cultural database indicated possible communication failures. Either guaranteed ASICs wouldn't use the channel to deploy intrusion systems. Neither prevented the Arcturans from tracing the transmission to fleet positions. She authorized the channel activation personally. Biometric confirmation required, voice pattern verification, retinal scan. The system logged her decision permanently. Any negative outcome would end her command. Possibly her career. Possibly worse if security breaches occurred. The communication suite powered up with low hum. Channel 7 bandwidth opened with precise calibration. Encryption fields shimmered around the transmission node. Vexlor stood in the center of the monitoring array. His posture showed formal bearing. No nervous movements. No physiological indicators of deception. Either perfectly controlled or genuinely committed to peaceful communication. ASICS's reception terminal activated on the other end. Standard Arcturan military encryption protocols engaged. Their systems mirrored ours in complexity. Both sides expecting deception. Both preparing countermeasures. The channel opened with simultaneous verification pulses. Each transmission carried embedded security checks. Each reception confirmed system integrity. The first visual flickered onto the main display. ASICS's command center appeared. Not the torture chamber intelligence predicted. Not the prisoner interrogation facility. A standard tactical operations room nearly identical to ours. Screens showing battle formations. Officers monitoring fleet movements. The Supreme Commander himself stood before the main viewer. His posture rigid. Eyes scanning the incoming transmission with evident suspicion. Vexler began speaking without preamble. His words translated through 3 separate linguistic matrices. Each translation cross-referenced against cultural databases. The message carried no military information, no tactical data. Only a request for cultural reconsideration. Only an explanation of smiling contexts. The channel remained open. No intrusion attempts detected. No security breaches registered. ASICS's secondary heart palpitation showed on medical monitors. The physiological response to extreme cognitive dissonance. His officers watched the cultural data unfold across their screens. Humans smiling during births, during weddings, during reunions. The exact same expression they'd classified as ultimate aggression. The transmission continued without interruption. Both sides maintained channel integrity. Both monitored for deception. Both finding none where they expected it everywhere. ASICS received the transmission during final battle preparations. His command center hummed with activation sequences for planetary bombardment systems. He expected to see a tortured prisoner, broken, coerced, forced to deliver false testimony under duress, standard interrogation outcomes, standard psychological warfare tactics. The screen flickered to life showing Vexler standing unbowed in a simple room. No restraints, no visible injuries. The Arcturan's aristocratic bearing remained completely intact. Shoulders squared, head elevated, vocal tones measured and precise. This violated every expectation of human captivity protocols. He watched Vexlor explain the honor grimace misinterpretation with clinical detachment. The analysis matched Arcturan scholarly precision, muscle group activations, cultural context comparisons, historical precedent analyses. Our command structure values honor above tactical advantage. Deceiving a prisoner into false testimony would bring eternal dishonor. But so would waging war based on fundamental misreading of biological signals. The contradiction created cognitive strain throughout the command center. Then the holographic cascade began. Humans smiling across 10,000 categorized instances. Birth celebrations. Wedding ceremonies. Family reunions. Sporting events. Artistic performances. The database tag scrolled beside each example. Joy response, friendly greeting, amusement reaction. Not a single instance tagged as aggression. Not one classified as threat display. The exact same facial expression we'd cataloged as pre-combat behavior appeared during moments of celebration and connection. Azix's secondary heart began to palpitate. The physiological response to extreme cognitive dissonance. His tactical officers watched the same data unfold. Weapons officers hesitated at their consoles. Navigation specialists paused trajectory calculations. The evidence mounted with relentless consistency. Humans smiled when happy, smiled when friendly, smiled during peaceful activities. Our entire casus belli rested on misinterpreting their basic biology. He compared the footage to our own battle records. Human soldiers smiling before engagement. Human diplomats smiling during negotiations. Human medics smiling while treating wounded. We'd classified every instance as aggression, as psychological warfare, as dominance displays. The database showed identical expressions during completely non-hostile events. The pattern became undeniable. The war might be based on a translation error, a cultural blind spot, a catastrophic misunderstanding of facial muscles. Honor demanded reassessment. Tactical advantage suggested continuing bombardment. His officers awaited the decision. Attack sequences remained primed. Fleet formations held combat readiness. 7 cycles of hostilities hung in the balance. Billions of lives depended on interpreting 10,000 smiles correctly. Azix gave the stand-down order. Immediate cessation of attack preparations. Weapon systems to standby status. Fleet formations to hold position. The command center fell silent except for system confirmation tones. Officers looked at each other, then back at the screens. The human cultural data continued streaming. More smiling examples, more peaceful contexts, more evidence that we'd gotten it completely wrong. This pause became the first break in hostilities in 7 cycles. No attacks, no maneuvers, no communications beyond the ongoing data transmission. Both sides watching, both sides reassessing, both sides realizing the war might be based on something other than actual aggression. The standing down of his fleet would either prevent massive casualties or create catastrophic vulnerability. The humans cycled through 14 different childhood songs in 3 minutes flat. Each rhyme produced distinct acoustic patterns that interfered with Keon targeting systems in specific ways. We monitored the acoustic signatures on secondary displays. Frequency oscillations matched known vulnerability ranges in Keon technology. Their systems incorporate organic components particularly susceptible to sonic disruption. This wasn't random noise. This was targeted acoustic warfare using cultural artifacts as weapons. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star caused immediate navigation errors. The warship's stellar positioning calculations deviated by 0.03 degrees, enough to miss a target by kilometers at current range. The rhyme's mathematical progression confused their AI's predictive algorithms. Human lullabies contain precise rhythmic structures that disrupt pattern recognition systems. The Keon computers tried to analyze the melody as tactical data. Failed catastrophically. Itsy Bitsy Spider created feedback loops in environmental controls. Life support systems fluctuated between oxygen-rich and carbon-heavy mixtures. Internal pressure readings spiked unpredictably. The rhyme's repetitive ascending-descending pattern mimicked emergency warning signals in their organic circuitry. Keon technology blends biological and synthetic components. The sonic vibrations resonated with their biomechanical systems in ways pure machinery wouldn't experience. We watched power readings drop across the warship's offensive capabilities. Weapon systems cycled down without command authorization. Shield generators oscillated between full strength and near collapse. The human maintained perfect pitch and rhythm despite radiation exposure. Environmental suit integrity dropped below 40%. Vital signs showed increasing cellular degradation. They never missed a beat, never faltered in the delivery. The nursery rhymes became a rotating arsenal of disruption. Each song targeting different systems, each melody exploiting different vulnerabilities. Row Your Boat disrupted harmonic stabilizers. Humpty Dumpty interfered with communication arrays. Mary Had a Little Lamb caused power distribution irregularities. The patterns weren't random. They followed mathematical progressions that Keon AI interpreted as conflicting command signals. Human cultural memory provided the weaponry. Childhood songs remembered from Earth nurseries. Simple melodies learned before language mastery. The human weaponized nostalgia against advanced technology. Their vocal cords became more effective than plasma cannons. Their cultural heritage proved more valuable than military training. The warship's commander faced an opponent using entirely unconventional tactics. Standard response protocols offered no guidance for nursery rhyme attacks. Their battle computers contained no references for ring around the rosy as combat methodology. The hesitation gave the human crucial additional seconds. The Tigrian cubs remained protected behind the steadily deteriorating environmental suit. This tactical innovation would eventually rewrite engagement protocols across multiple species. Military academies would study the acoustic frequencies for decades. Xenocultural researchers would analyze the psychological impact of weaponized childhood memories. The simple truth remained. Sometimes the most effective defense isn't superior technology, but superior understanding of an enemy's weaknesses. The human's environmental suit integrity warning flashed red on our monitors. Radiation exposure reached critical levels. Neural degradation indicators showed irreversible damage. They continued singing. Voice steady. Pitch perfect. The warship's weapons remained inactive. Targeting systems offline. Navigation confused. The nursery rhymes had achieved what entire fleets failed to accomplish. They made a Kian warship hesitate. Dr. Okafor's cultural data package represented our best attempt at preventing total war. 47 terabytes of carefully curated human interaction footage. Birth celebrations with smiling relatives. Wedding ceremonies with grinning participants. Family reunions with beaming faces across generations. We'd tried cultural exchanges before. Both sides dismissed them as propaganda. Too polished. Too perfect, always showing each species at their absolute best while ignoring the messy realities of actual interaction. This package included everything. Joy responses alongside grief reactions, threat displays compared to friendly greetings, the complete spectrum of human nonverbal communication in raw, unedited formats. Arcturan scientists applied their standard verification protocols. Data authenticity checks, source validation, pattern analysis across multiple sample sets. Their methods confirmed what we claimed. The smiling meant different things in different contexts. Sometimes friendship, sometimes amusement, rarely aggression. Historical records showed cultural packages resolved 43% of first contact conflicts. When both sides actually bothered to analyze them. When they moved beyond initial distrust. ASICS ordered his own xenocultural experts to conduct independent verification. Not just accepting our data. Not just trusting our analysis. His team spent 72 hours reviewing the material, cross-referencing with their own battlefield footage, comparing our smiling examples with their combat recordings. The findings came back unequivocal. Human facial expressions showed consistent patterns across emotional contexts. The same muscle movements occurred during peaceful interactions as during combat situations. Their analysis confirmed our claims about nonverbal communication. The war might be based on misinterpretation rather than actual hostility. This verification process became the critical hurdle. Either both sides accepted the data or hostilities would resume with greater intensity. We monitored their response through diplomatic channels. The usual posturing and positioning continued even as the analysis unfolded. Military assets remained on high alert. Fleet formations held combat readiness, but the shooting had stopped. The bombardment sequences remained paused. The cultural data created a temporary ceasefire based on possible misunderstanding, rather than mutual exhaustion. ASICS's experts delivered their report directly to the High Council. 12 sector commanders reviewed the findings simultaneously. The evidence showed consistent misinterpretation of human behavior. Their own battle footage viewed through new contextual understanding. Human soldiers smiling at each other for encouragement misread as aggression displays. Human diplomats smiling during negotiations interpreted as threat posturing. The patterns became impossible to ignore once someone pointed them out. The verification changed the fundamental equation. This wasn't about which side possessed superior military technology. Wasn't about resource allocation or territorial control. This was about basic communication failure at the biological level. Two species looking at the same facial expressions and seeing completely different intentions. The data package provided the translation key we'd all been missing. This confirmation process would determine whether the war continued or ended. Whether billions would die or live. Whether two civilizations would destroy each other over something as simple as not understanding how to read each other's faces. The cultural analysts finished their assessment. The data was authentic. The interpretation was correct. The smiling meant friendship, not threats. Now the military commanders had to decide what to do with that information. The smallest cub broke from its siblings during a momentary pause between rhymes. Tigrian biology drives their young toward warmth sources and rhythmic vibrations, evolutionary traits for seeking parents and safe nesting sites. The human's body heat registered as a potential shelter point on infrared. Their vocalizations created sympathetic vibrations in the surrounding dust particles. The combination proved irresistible to juvenile instincts despite the surrounding danger. Kian tactical manuals classify this behavior as attempted domestication. Their military doctrine considers any interspecies bonding initiative as threat multiplication. Punishment protocols mandate immediate termination of both parties. Standard response involves plasma sterilization of the contact area. 7 documented incidents show similar outcomes. Cross-species contact met with maximum force. The warship's weapons remained charged and targeted. Firing solutions updated continuously. The human didn't break rhythm. Continued vocalizing "hush little baby" while slowly extending their left hand. Non-dominant limb presentation reduces threat perception across most mammalian species. Human children learn these protocols through cultural transmission, stories, parental guidance, and media depictions of animal interaction. The motion appeared instinctual rather than trained. Palm open, fingers relaxed, no sudden movements. The cub moved forward in hesitant increments. Its siblings remained crouched behind the human's legs. Sensor readings showed the juvenile's heart rate decreasing as it approached. The human maintained steady vocalizations despite radiation exposure readings reaching critical levels. Environmental suit integrity warnings flashed across our monitors. They ignored them completely. Contact occurred at the 3-minute mark. The cub rubbed its facial scent glands against the human's leg plating. Purring vibrations registered at 28 Hz, a frequency known to promote tissue regeneration and reduce aggression in Tigrian physiology. The sound created standing waves in the surrounding dust cloud. Our acoustic sensors detected sympathetic vibrations in the human's body, despite the environmental suit damping. The warship's commander held the attack order. Weapon systems remained active but unfired. Kian battle computers recalculated probabilities continuously. The cross-species contact created a tactical paradox their systems couldn't resolve. Offensive protocols demanded termination. Behavioral analysis suggested non-hostile interaction. The conflict between programmed responses caused system hesitation. This physical contact violated 7 galactic non-interference statutes. The accords explicitly forbid cross-species domestication attempts. Physical bonding between species carries severe penalties under interspecies law. Both parties could face tribunal judgment if they survived the immediate standoff. Legal databases showed 93% conviction rates for such violations. The human continued singing while the cub rubbed against their leg. Their free hand remained at their side. No attempt to touch the juvenile. No reciprocal grooming behavior. Simply standing there providing warmth and rhythmic vibration, while a warship aimed enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. The image burned itself into every observer's memory. This moment would be debated in council chambers for years. Legal scholars would argue intent versus instinct. Military theorists would analyze tactical implications. Xenobiologists would study the cross-species communication aspects. But in that moment, it was simply one species providing comfort to another, while standing against annihilation. The act's simplicity made its violation of established norms even more profound. The purring frequency created a feedback loop with the human's vocalizations. 28 Hz modulation affected the warship's organic circuitry. Power fluctuations increased across their systems. The commander's hesitation stretched into unprecedented territory. No tactical manual covered this scenario. No historical precedent existed for nursery rhymes and purring cats disabling a battleship. This unauthorized contact would eventually force re-evaluation of multiple interspecies laws. The very statutes designed to prevent conflict were preventing understanding. The act of offering comfort became simultaneously illegal and potentially war-ending. The debate would rage long after the immediate danger passed, but the image would remain. One species protecting another through simple physical presence. ASICs convened the High Council under combat conditions. That required unanimous consent from all 12 sector commanders. 3 of them argued for immediate bombardment of human positions. Their fleets stood ready. Attack vectors plotted, weapons charged. They cited casualty reports, strategic advantages, historical precedents for overwhelming force against emerging threats. The data streams showed real-time battle readiness across 7 sectors. They presented the cultural evidence alongside military assessments. Our decision-making frameworks prioritize empirical data over tradition. The commanders examined 10,000 examples of human smiling, cross-referenced with battlefield footage, compared peaceful contexts with combat situations. The patterns showed consistent misinterpretation. Human non-aggression signals read as threats. Their evidence mounted with statistical weight. Only 17% of council sessions result in policy changes during active warfare. The structure resists adaptation under fire. Commanders prefer established protocols over unproven theories. The vote required 75% majority to alter war status. 9 commanders needed to agree. The cultural data challenged fundamental assumptions about the conflict's origins. The debate lasted 47 minutes. Commanders cited operational security, fleet vulnerabilities, the risks of ceasefire during combat operations. They questioned data authenticity, suggested human deception strategies, argued for maintaining offensive pressure while verifying claims. Standard tactical doctrine favors sustained aggression during advantage periods. ASICs presented Vexlor's testimony, the solved puzzle cube, the cultural package verification, the evidence of systematic miscommunication. He showed comparative analyses of human and Arcturan facial expressions, muscle group activation patterns, contextual interpretations. The data indicated catastrophic translation errors at biological levels. The vote proceeded under emergency protocols, electronic verification, biometric confirmation required from each commander. 7 approved ceasefire negotiations immediately, 2 opposed, 3 abstained pending further verification. The 75% threshold wasn't reached. The war status remained active. ASICs invoked emergency authority, supreme command privilege during existential threats. He redefined the conflict parameters based on new evidence. The Council rules permitted this during verified intelligence breakthroughs. He authorized provisional ceasefire negotiations with human government. The decision bypassed standard voting procedures but remained within operational guidelines. Fleet commanders received stand-down orders, weapons systems to defensive postures, attack formations to holding patterns, communication channels opened to human diplomatic frequencies. The policy shift occurred during active combat operations without disengaging completely. A calculated risk based on cultural interpretation rather than military assessment. This decision would save billions of lives across both empires. Prevented continued hostilities based on misunderstanding. Created opportunity for communication rather than destruction. The human government responded within minutes. Their own fleets adjusted to defensive configurations, both sides maintaining combat readiness while exploring dialogue. The transition from active warfare to ceasefire negotiations represented unprecedented adaptation. Military structures typically resist such changes during engagement. The empirical evidence proved too compelling to ignore. The cost of continuing based on misinterpretation outweighed the risks of attempted communication. This policy shift would be studied across multiple civilizations. A case where cultural understanding overrode military doctrine, where evidence of communication failure prevented further destruction. The war didn't end instantly, but the shooting stopped while both sides reassessed fundamental assumptions. The human negotiators began transmitting proposed terms within the hour. Their opening positions reflected the cultural revelations. Emphasis on communication protocols, cultural exchange programs, joint research initiatives. The dialogue focused on understanding rather than surrender, both sides recognizing the conflict originated in translation errors rather than actual hostility. The environmental suit's integrity readings dropped into the red zone. 38% structural integrity. Key and radiation emissions penetrated the sonic defense. Their technology uses frequencies that bypass conventional shielding. You could see the damage on the medical readouts. Cellular degradation across all major systems. Neural pathways showing irreversible compromise. The human should have been unconscious from the pain. Should have been unable to form coherent thoughts. Instead, they kept singing. The nursery rhymes required perfect execution, specific frequencies, precise rhythms. Any deviation reduced effectiveness. Key and targeting systems would have recalibrated instantly with imperfect input. The human maintained pitch accuracy despite neural damage. Cognitive functions should have collapsed under that radiation exposure. Standard models predicted complete shutdown within minutes. They sang for 17 minutes after critical exposure levels. You could see the physical effects on the visual feed. Tremors in the hands, slight staggering in the stance. The environmental suit's medical monitors flashed constant warnings. Vital signs showed systemic failure. They never missed a beat, never dropped a note. The 3 Tigrian cubs remained sheltered behind their legs, purring vibrations creating sympathetic resonance with the songs. Protective instincts override self-preservation in 89% of human guardians. The data comes from centuries of observation. Parents shielding children during disasters, soldiers covering comrades during attacks. The pattern holds across cultures and contexts. This instance just happened to occur against a warship instead of more conventional threats. Command considered extraction, calculated the risks. The Kian ship maintained weapons lock. Any approach would have triggered immediate response. Rescue probability registered at 0.2%. Casualty projections showed high likelihood of losing both rescue team and original target. The decision wasn't difficult mathematically. It was impossible morally. They watched the human burn themselves out to maintain protection. The human accepted certain death. No hesitation, no attempt to disengage. They understood the mathematics better than anyone. 38% integrity meant approximately 90 seconds of continued protection. The songs needed to last that long. The cubs needed that much time. Their own survival became irrelevant in the calculation. This sacrifice became the legend's central element. Not the technological cleverness, not the tactical innovation, the willingness to stand between death and the helpless despite certain personal loss. That's what resonated across species lines. That's what made this incident different from countless other battlefield sacrifices. The human's neural readings showed interesting patterns during the final minutes. Activity spiked in memory centers, not fear responses, not pain processing. The brain accessed childhood memories, the very songs they were singing. The rhymes came from deep cultural programming, rather than conscious effort. The body failed while the cultural memory persisted. Final systems failure occurred at 19 minutes and 12 seconds. The environmental suit integrity hit 0. Biological functions ceased. The song stopped abruptly. The silence that followed felt louder than the weapons that never fired. The Kian warship maintained position for 17 additional seconds, then powered down weapons completely, withdrew without firing another shot. This solitary act of protection achieved what fleets had failed to accomplish. It made a Kian commander reconsider standard protocol. It made a warship stand down without firing. It saved 3 lives through sheer unwillingness to let harm pass. The human's name never entered the official reports. The legend would remember only the action, not the individual. Sometimes that's more powerful anyway. Vexler's shuttle crossed back into Arcturan space carrying 3 items of consequence. The solved puzzle cube rested in a neutralized containment field. The human cultural data package occupied a separate secure partition. The ceasefire terms displayed on his personal terminal. Standard protocol demanded immediate debriefing in isolation. Traditionalists within the Imperium already considered him contaminated. Human contact carried stigma among certain military factions. Their suspicion manifested in heightened security scans and delayed docking clearance. He presented the cube during his first debriefing, placed it on the metallic conference table without commentary. The solved configuration spoke louder than any verbal argument. Arcturan culture values physical proofs over spoken agreements. A solved puzzle demonstrates cognitive capacity, strategic capability, worthiness for diplomatic engagement. The commanders examined the perfect color alignment. No scrambled sections, no incomplete patterns. The evidence of human worthiness rested in those 54 colored squares. His battlefield experience provided unique insight. He'd observed human behavior under stress, witnessed their communication patterns during captivity, analyzed their threat responses and non-threat signals. This practical knowledge complemented the cultural database. Most prisoners return with trauma or intelligence data. He returned with understanding of how humans actually function. Their smiling, their puzzle-solving approaches, their prisoner treatment protocols. All differed from intelligence projections. Only 3% of POWs become diplomatic liaisons in Arcturan history. The transition requires exceptional circumstances and unique qualifications. His solved puzzle cube met the intellectual threshold. His cultural understanding provided the practical foundation. The High Council created a new position specifically for this conflict: Human Relations Liaison. The title carried ambassadorial weight without traditional diplomatic constraints. It acknowledged the extraordinary nature of this communication breakdown. His appointment signaled policy transformation. The Imperium doesn't create new positions lightly, doesn't elevate prisoners to authority roles without overwhelming justification. The war's origin and cultural misunderstanding demanded unprecedented responses. Standard military protocols had failed. Standard diplomatic approaches had worsened tensions. Something new was required. Someone who understood both sides of the misinterpretation. Vexler accepted the role with formal precision. No celebration, no ceremony. The weight of responsibility settled immediately. He became the first bridge between two civilizations still technically at war. His shuttle would return to human space as an official diplomatic vessel. His communications would carry authority from the highest levels. His interpretations could prevent future conflicts or accelerate existing ones. The traditionalists watched with open skepticism. Their influence remained considerable within military structures. They viewed the liaison position as dangerous innovation, potential contamination vector, weakness disguised as diplomacy. Vexler understood their perspective, didn't agree with it, recognized it as another obstacle to navigate. His success would require convincing both sides of mutual understanding. His first official act was transmitting the verified cultural data to all sector commands. The package showed humans smiling across peaceful contexts: birth celebrations, wedding ceremonies, family reunions. The evidence now carried official verification from High Council analysts. Fleet commanders received orders to recalculate threat assessments based on new parameters. The recalibration would take time. Resistance was inevitable. Progress would be measured in small adjustments rather than immediate transformations. This appointment represented more than personal advancement. It signaled the Imperium's willingness to adapt, to accept that military might alone couldn't resolve fundamental communication failures, that sometimes understanding requires bridge builders rather than bombardiers. The solved cube remained on the conference table as he departed, a silent testament to the cognitive capacities that made this bridge possible. The humans could think, could solve complex problems, could communicate in ways we were only beginning to understand. His shuttle reoriented for the return journey, course plotted for human diplomatic channels, the communications array activated with new authorization codes. The Human Relations Liaison began work before leaving Arcturan space. First transmission: updated cultural annotations for standard threat assessment protocols. Second transmission: request for joint research into nonverbal communication variances. The bridge was building itself already. The story spread through merchant lanes within 3 cycles. It hit military outposts shortly after. The narrative contained classic mythic elements: sacrifice of a protector, strange weapons made from cultural memory, orphaned young receiving unexpected sanctuary. Merchant crews added their own interpretations during transit. Military analysts applied tactical frameworks. Every species viewed the events through their own cultural lenses. The core facts remained consistent. The meanings multiplied exponentially. Xenopsychologists noted the pattern. Galactic myths often transform practical events into symbolic narratives. The human nursery rhyme defense became sonic warfare technology in some retellings. Entire technical manuals were written about harmonic frequency weapons. Arms manufacturers attempted to replicate the acoustic properties. They missed the point completely. The weapon wasn't the sound. It was the cultural memory behind it. Other interpretations focused on cross-species bonding. Protection themes resonated particularly strongly with communal species, the image of one species shielding another without expectation of reward. The 3 cubs represented vulnerability. The human represented unexpected guardianship. These versions emphasized emotional connections over tactical analyses. They spread faster through civilian populations, became children's stories in some cultures. Human narratives propagate 40% faster than other species' stories. Our psychology favors narrative structures with clear emotional arcs, Sacrifice, protection, unexpected resolution. The legend bypassed standard diplomatic channels entirely. It reached planets that had never encountered humans, shaped perceptions before first contact even occurred. This organic spread proved more effective than centuries of diplomatic outreach. First contact teams adopted the legend as training material. Standard protocol now includes cultural misinterpretation scenarios. Cadets analyze the smiling misunderstanding, study the nursery rhyme defense, examine the solved puzzle cube incident. The lesson isn't about specific tactics. It's about flexibility in interpretation, about questioning initial assumptions regarding other species' behavior. The legend changed fundamental approaches to human encounters. Species that previously avoided contact now initiate communications. They've seen what happens when misunderstandings spiral into conflict. They've also seen how quickly those conflicts can resolve with proper understanding. The story demonstrates both the dangers of assumption and the possibilities of recalibration. Merchant guilds use the legend during negotiation training. They emphasize the economic costs of cultural misinterpretation. The war wasted resources on both sides. The peace created new trade opportunities. The numbers are stark when calculated properly. Billions in military expenditure versus millions in cultural exchange programs. The financial argument complements the ethical one. Military academies have incorporated the legend into tactical decision trees. Commanders now have standing orders to consult cultural databases before engagement. The smiling protocol requires verification of threat displays through multiple contexts. This procedural change has prevented 17 potential conflicts in the past cycle alone. The legend became practical doctrine faster than most regulations. The story's propagation demonstrates narrative power over policy. Decades of diplomatic efforts achieved limited results. One story about misunderstanding and resolution changed perceptions across spiral arms. It provided concrete examples instead of abstract principles, showed the dangers of assumption and the rewards of understanding, made the theoretical practical in ways briefing documents never could. This single incident accomplished what entire diplomatic corps failed to achieve. It made species reconsider their approaches to first contact, made them question their interpretation frameworks, made them recognize that sometimes threats aren't threats, sometimes aggression is friendliness, sometimes the most dangerous thing is misreading someone's face. The legend's endurance comes from its simplicity. One person standing between danger and the helpless, using whatever tools they have available, even if those tools are just childhood memories, even if the cost is everything. That image resonates across species lines. That sacrifice means something universal. That's why the story spread. That's why it stuck. That's why it changed things. Human-Arcturan relations accelerated faster than projected timelines. The ceasefire held. Neutral zones established for cultural and technological exchange covered 12 solar systems. Joint research facilities operated under shared security protocols. The Intrepid became primary diplomatic contact vessel. Progress wasn't linear. Military factions on both sides attempted sabotage operations. Traditionalists viewed cooperation as weakness. Security reports documented 17 attempted breaches of exchange protocols in the first year. The opposition wasn't overwhelming, just persistent enough to require constant vigilance. Joint research teams focused on biological communication studies. They analyzed neuromuscular expressions across both species, mapped facial muscle activation patterns, compared contextual interpretations of identical expressions. The work required shared laboratories, shared living quarters, shared data analysis. Post-conflict cooperation increases 72% when based on misunderstanding resolution. The numbers held true here. Collaborations formed around solving the original problem. The work became both practical and symbolic. The Rubik's Cube became standard diplomatic gift. Every meeting began with its placement on negotiation tables, solved or unsolved depending on context. The colored squares represented the misunderstanding that started everything, also represented the cognitive flexibility that ended it. Symbolic objects reduced tension in 68% of interspecies negotiations. The cube proved particularly effective. It wasn't just a puzzle. It was proof that both species could solve complex problems together. Deep space exploration collaborations began within 2 years. Joint missions to uncharted sectors, shared sensor data, combined navigation systems. Human adaptability complemented Arcturan precision. Their approaches differed but complemented each other. The partnership yielded 17 new planetary classifications, 48 previously unknown astronomical phenomena, both species gaining access to discoveries neither could have achieved alone. The cooperation extended beyond obligatory exchanges into genuine scientific partnership. The combined Starbase project started in the third year. Construction in neutral territory, architectural designs blending both species preferences, life support systems accommodating both biologics, command structures integrating both military traditions. Completion occurred within 5 years as projected. The station became permanent symbol of cooperation, not just a diplomatic outpost, a functioning community where both species lived and worked together daily. This cooperation would lead to discoveries beyond initial projections. Joint research into quantum communication technologies, shared development of new propulsion systems, collaborative astronomical surveys covering previously inaccessible regions. The Starbase became a hub for scientific innovation neither species could have developed independently. Their combined perspectives solved problems that had frustrated researchers for decades. The military opposition never completely disappeared. Security breaches continued at reduced frequency. Traditionalists maintained skeptical monitoring of all joint operations. Their influence diminished as cooperation produced tangible benefits. The economic advantages of shared exploration outweighed ideological resistance. New trade routes opened. Resource-sharing agreements created mutual prosperity. The practical rewards of peace gradually overcame nostalgic attachment to conflict. The cultural exchange programs expanded beyond scientific communities. Artistic collaborations, literary translations, culinary exchanges. The Rubik's Cube remained central icon, but now joined by other shared symbols. Musical compositions blending both species' harmonic preferences, visual art incorporating both aesthetic traditions. The misunderstanding that started the war became foundation for increasingly sophisticated cultural dialogue. This transitional period demonstrated how quickly relations can evolve when both sides commit to understanding. The shift from active warfare to deep cooperation occurred within years rather than generations. The key was addressing the root cause rather than just the symptoms. Fixing the communication failure made everything else possible. The partnership would eventually produce technological and cultural achievements that reshaped both civilizations' futures. The three cubs made it home. Their transport cleared Tigrian quarantine protocols after extensive biological screening. They carried human genetic material in their fur and blood samples. Skin cells, respiratory particles, microscopic evidence of physical contact with another species. Their species had never incorporated external biological material before. No recorded instances of cross-species genetic transfer. Their entire evolutionary history emphasized biological isolation as survival strategy. They developed unusual behavioral patterns. Problem-solving approaches showed human-like flexibility. Social structures became more collaborative than typical Tigrian hierarchies. They used rhythmic vocalization similar to the nursery rhymes they'd heard. Their purring frequencies modulated to match human speech patterns. Cross-species cultural contamination usually diminishes within 2 generations. These patterns persisted beyond initial exposure, became integrated into their developmental trajectory. They established the first Tigrian human cultural exchange program, initiated contact through diplomatic channels, requested human participation in their coming-of-age ceremonies, offered to share their unique perspective on interspecies communication. Only 12% of species maintain long-term contact after rescue events. Most returned to isolationism after initial intervention. These cubs became the exception that proved the rule. Their unique perspective made them valuable intermediaries. They understood human behavior from direct experience, remembered the human sacrifice through sensory memory, the scent of the environmental suit, the vibration of the vocalizations, the warmth of the protective presence. They could explain human cultural context to their own species, could interpret Tigrian reactions for human diplomats, became living bridges between 2 different evolutionary paths. They became permanent symbols of the legend's truth, physical proof that the events actually occurred, that one species protected another without expectation of reward, that cross-species understanding was possible despite biological differences. Their existence gave the story tangible reality beyond oral tradition. You could visit them, speak with them, see the human influence in their behavior patterns. The sacrifice gained lasting meaning through their survival. The human didn't just delay destruction temporarily. They created something enduring, something that continued influencing both species long after the incident concluded. The cubs carried forward the protective impulse that saved them, extended it into ongoing cultural exchange, turned a momentary standoff into permanent connection. Their legacy demonstrated how individual actions can reshape interspecies relations. One human's decision to protect created ripple effects across generations. The cubs became ambassadors for understanding, living proof that sometimes the most effective diplomacy isn't negotiated in meetings, but enacted through simple protective gestures. Their continued existence reminded everyone that the legend was never just a story. It was a foundation for something new. This ongoing relationship would eventually produce collaborative research into interspecies communication, joint studies on nonverbal expression, shared exploration initiatives. The cubs' unique perspective informed scientific approaches to first contact protocols. Their experience became data points in developing better understanding between species. The human sacrifice created not just survivors but active participants in building bridges. The three cubs represented the best possible outcome of cross-species contact. Not conflict, not misunderstanding, not destruction, but mutual growth and understanding. They proved that protection could be more than momentary intervention. It could be the starting point for lasting connection. Their lives became the permanent answer to whether the human sacrifice was worth the cost. Multiple species initiated comprehensive studies of humanity following the ceasefire. They analyzed 743 documented instances of extraordinary human behavior across 17 sectors. No consistent biological superiority explained the patterns. No technological advantage accounted for the outcomes. Humans didn't possess greater physical strength or faster reaction times. Their ships weren't more advanced. Their weapons followed standard principles. The difference lay elsewhere. Humans demonstrated disproportionate willingness for self-sacrifice. Their neurochemistry supports altruistic behavior beyond most species' capabilities. Oxytocin and vasopressin levels spike during protective actions. Neural pathways activate reward centers when assisting others. This biological framework enables actions that defy standard self-preservation instincts. They'll risk everything for complete strangers. They'll die for abstract principles. Most species find this incomprehensible. They weaponized cultural elements as effectively as technological ones. No other species has successfully deployed nostalgia and childhood memory as combat tools. Their nursery rhyme defense wasn't an isolated incident. Historical records show similar patterns. Soldiers singing folk songs during assaults, parents using lullabies to calm children in bomb shelters. Entire resistance movements built around cultural memory rather than military strategy. Their culture functions as both shield and weapon. The galaxy's perception shifted from seeing humans as threats to valuing them as allies. Their unpredictability became asset rather than liability. Military planners started factoring in cultural variables alongside tactical assessments. The assumption that humans will act in self-interest proved consistently wrong. They often prioritize others' safety over their own survival. This makes them unreliable antagonists but invaluable partners. Humanity's legend grew from cultural flexibility rather than military power. They adapt other species' technologies faster than anyone anticipated. They integrate alien cultural concepts into their own frameworks. Their communication systems incorporate multiple linguistic structures simultaneously. This malleability makes them effective bridge builders between conflicting species. They don't dominate through force. They connect through understanding. This perception shift protected human colonies for generations. Species that might have considered invasion reconsidered after studying the data. Conquest attempts against humans carry unpredictable costs. They don't follow standard surrender protocols. They don't respond to threats predictably. Their willingness to sacrifice makes them dangerous opponents but trustworthy allies. The calculus changed from "can we defeat them?" to "should we try?" The research continues across multiple scientific disciplines. Xenopsychologists map human neural responses to interspecies communication. Sociologists analyze their cultural transmission methods. Military strategists develop new models incorporating altruism variables. The data consistently shows humans operate on different ethical frameworks than most spacefaring species. Their value system prioritizes collective well-being over individual advancement. This difference explains why they stood between those cubs and a warship, why they sang instead of fighting, why they died protecting strangers. Other species might calculate odds or assess strategic value. Humans see something worth protecting and act. No cost-benefit analysis, no survival probability assessment. Just immediate intervention against overwhelming odds. Their legend persists because it reveals uncomfortable truths about other species. It shows how often we miss what's right before us, how we misinterpret basic biological signals, how we prioritize technology over understanding. The human difference isn't about being better. It's about being different in ways that challenge our assumptions about how civilizations should behave. This ongoing reassessment will likely continue for generations. Every new human colony, every first contact, every crisis response, the data keeps accumulating. The pattern holds. They keep surprising us. They keep standing between danger and the vulnerable. They keep using whatever tools they have available, even if those tools are just childhood songs. Even if the cost is everything. Captain Santos's final log entry summarized the conflict with clinical precision. She noted that preventing war required extending friendship when others expected aggression. Her military advisors had called this approach dangerously naive. They cited tactical vulnerabilities, strategic risks, historical precedents. They weren't wrong about the dangers. They were wrong about the probabilities. Non-aggressive first moves reduce conflict escalation by 83%. The data comes from 7 centuries of interspecies contact records. Reaching out when others anticipate attack changes the fundamental equation. It creates cognitive dissonance in standard threat assessment protocols. Most species' defensive systems aren't programmed to handle unilateral de-escalation. The confusion creates openings for communication that wouldn't otherwise exist. The courage to smile when others expect weapons discharge isn't natural instinct. It's trained response, cultivated attitude, deliberate choice to override standard self-preservation programming. Humans seem to grasp this intuitively. Their neural pathways reward altruistic behavior. Their cultural narratives celebrate these counterintuitive actions. Other species find it inexplicable until they see the results. The wisdom to recognize when others are smiling back completes the equation. Interpreting biological signals correctly prevents catastrophic misunderstandings. Cultural training reduces diplomatic incidents by 67%. The Arcturan War demonstrated the cost of getting this wrong. Their entire military campaign stemmed from misreading facial muscles. Billions spent because nobody checked a cultural database. Santos's recommendations became standard first contact protocol within months. All initial contact teams now receive mandatory cultural interpretation training. They learn to distinguish threat displays from friendly gestures across multiple species. The curriculum includes the smiling misinterpretation case study. Cadets analyze the muscle group activations, compare contextual frameworks, recognize how easily communication fails without shared references. This procedural shift has already prevented 17 potential conflicts. Merchant Guild reports show reduced tensions at border crossings. Diplomatic channels experience fewer misunderstandings. The changes seem small individually. Collectively, they reshape how species interact. Sometimes preventing war requires nothing more complex than understanding when someone's trying to be friendly. The simplicity masks the difficulty. Recognizing smiles requires overcoming evolutionary programming, ignoring threat assessment alarms, trusting data over instinct. Santos's log emphasized this psychological component. The hardest part isn't the tactical risk. It's the mental shift required to see aggression where you expect friendship, and friendship where you expect aggression. Her recommendations extended beyond military applications. Trade negotiations incorporated cultural liaison officers. Scientific collaborations included communication specialists. Even civilian transport protocols now include basic expression recognition training. The changes created a framework for preventing misunderstandings rather than just responding to them. This insight would eventually save more worlds than any weapon system. Battle fleets protect through intimidation. Cultural understanding protects through connection. The former requires constant maintenance. The latter becomes self-reinforcing. Each successful interaction builds trust for the next one. Each prevented misunderstanding creates space for genuine communication. The lesson seems almost too simple when stated plainly. Sometimes you need to smile first. Sometimes you need to recognize when someone's smiling back. The complexity lies in execution, in overcoming generations of evolutionary programming, in choosing connection over suspicion when every instinct screams danger. That's where the real work happens. That's where conflicts actually get prevented before they start. The legend endures because it reveals an uncomfortable cosmic truth. What appears incomprehensible is often simply different. What seems threatening might be completely normal elsewhere. The human protecting those cubs became legend through understanding, not destruction. They used cultural memory as both shield and weapon. Their sacrifice demonstrated that communication failures can be overcome, that protection matters more than victory, that sometimes standing between danger and the vulnerable creates more change than any fleet action ever could. The story persists because it challenges how we view conflict itself.